Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Sunday video where I look at the hottest Golden Age comics for the week. And this is an interesting one because it's the MyComicShop Prime auction. I think they do like 3 or 4 of these a year, and I always like looking at them because MyComicShop is, it's probably the biggest, I would say the biggest online retailer for comics, but it's still smaller in terms of having auctions, like in terms of the big auctions. Like when you think of the big auction houses, you think of more Comic Connect, Comic Link, Heritage Auctions, maybe Golden. Well, they do have some big books on MyComicShop, but how well do they fare compared to some of these other auction houses? So this is an interesting one because generally I find with MyComicShop's auctions, I can usually get a few deals. And we're going to see, I'm going to look at 10 sales, as I always do. And these are pretty big sales. Are they records? Or, we'll see. And you'll be surprised by what hits number one on this list. It's an interesting list. Okay, we're going to start out with a number 10, and it's All Winners number 5. All Winners Comics number 5. DC Comics 1942, and this is like a Human Torch, Captain America, Submariner, Bucky, and Toro cover. Plus, got to throw in some Nazis, so they threw in some Nazis. Just a really cool book. I think it's Al Iverson cover, and yeah, just a really cool cover. So this was a 4.0 that sold, and it sold for $2,255, which is well below the previous record for this book. There was actually a record in April 2023 for $3,120. So well under that prior record. There's actually a more recent sale of a 2.0, which we can also compare it with, from May of 2024, where a 2.0 sold for $1,450. So based on the price per point, you would expect a 4.0 to sell for around $2,900, based on that. So slightly under that previous sale, so probably about 20-30% lower. So somebody got a real real good deal on this one. There's 80 of these on the census, and 65 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 9 on the list is Human Torch Comics number 8 from DC Comics 1942. It's an Alex Schomburg cover, and you got a really cool battle between Human Torch and Submariner. They're on a bridge, and it looks like they're going to melt the girders. It's just not a good situation for anyone that's on the bridge. But it's the Human Torch versus the Submariner, which is kind of a, fire and water kind of battle. Classic book. This was a 4.0 that sold, and it sold for $2,550. The previous record for this book was set back in June of 2023 for $4,945. Now, that was actually kind of an outlier sale because there was actually a more recent sale, I think just a few months ago, where one had sold for $3,840. So, this book kind of was on a little bit of a downward spiral, I guess. But this is still way below. This one really was, whoever got this one was a bit of a steal because it sold for basically over $1,000 cheaper than the last sale, and $2,000 cheaper, $2,500, like half basically of the record for this book. So definitely a steal on this one. There's 115 of these on the census, and 93 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 8 on the list is Dr. Savage, number 1. This is from March of 1933. It is a pulp, so it's not really a Golden Age comic, but it is a major book, and I kind of threw it into the list because it was part of this Golden Age sale. This is from Street and Smith, and it's the first appearance of Dr. Savage. Just a really major character that went from all the way from the Golden Age all the way up to the modern era. So I think he makes his first appearance in comics in the 1960s. So, but a cool character. Um, this is a .5 that sold, and it sold for $2,627. Now, it was a .5. You're probably wondering why it was a .5. Well, pages 51 through 64, so a lot of pages were missing. They're all gone. And all three edges were trimmed. So this book, kind of rough. Now, there's no sales history for this book because, a lot of these ones, the slabs, they just don't sell that often. Or if they sell, they probably sell in privately. There's only 6 of these on the census, and a 5.5 is the highest. So really a hard book to get in any grade. Only 6 on the census. It's quite rare. And just no sales to compare it to. So this is a record. I have no idea how much it should sell for, but it seems like a very strong record for the book. Number 7 on the list is Horrific number 3. This is from Harwald Publishing, I think it's Harwell. Harwell Publishing, 1953. It's a Don Heck cover, and it's a classic cover with the bullet to the brain cover. Originally, this same head image, it's a big head with a bullet through the brain, was used in War Fury number 1, but they reused it and kind of focused on it for this cover. This was a 4.5 that sold, and it sold for $3,177. Now, that's close to the prior record for this book. The previous record was set back in July of 2023 for $3,650. So kind of, a little bit, about $500 less than the previous record. So still a reasonably strong sale, but not quite there yet. There's 71 of these on the census, and 68 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 6 on the list is Detective Comics number 17. This is from DC Comics, 1938. It's a Greg Flessel cover, and it's the first appearance of Fu Manchu. I always thought the Fu Manchu was on the cover of Detective 1, but I guess that was a different character, just some Asian guy. This is the actual first appearance of Fu Manchu, so kind of cool. Classic character. This was a 5.5 restored copy that sold, and it sold for $3,450. Now, there are no prior records for a restored 5.5. So we don't really have anything to compare it with. Now, this was also a B3. I think it was a B3, so had a fair amount of restoration on it. I didn't write down all the restoration, but I believe there was color touch and stuff, and pieces added, the basics. And if you compare it, though, to a Blue Label in a 5.5 just sold in October of 2024 for $6,600. So, kind of about half what you would, of that Blue Label, which for this grade kind of is about in line. Usually a 5.5, you're kind of getting around that 40 to 50% of the value in terms of the blue versus the restored copy. And especially when you have that higher tier of restoration, generally you get slightly less, so more close to the 40%. So this is actually, more than 40%. It's closer to, actually it's more than 50%. So actually it was a strong sale. so MyComicShop does, get some new records. So this would be a record just by the fact that it's only sale, but actually it's a strong sale based on the value of a restored book versus a Blue Label. So there's 24 of these on the census, and 21 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 5 on the list is Thunda number 1. This is from This is also known as A1 Comics number 47. So if you're ever wanting to look it up, you have to use A1 Comics. It's annoying, but that's how it that's how it is. Um, so it's from Magazine Enterprises, 1952. It's a Frank Frazetta cover and interior art, which is kind of makes this book special because it's the only comic ever that Frank Frazetta did everything for. He did all of the artwork for it. And I believe he also was, involved with the story because the Thunda series actually ran 6 issues, I believe, and he only did the first issue. And part of the reason was they wanted him to change some of the story details, and because of creative differences, Frazetta said, "No, I'm not going to do any more," and he just walked away from it, even though it was really his baby. He did everything for it, so it was kind of a interesting story there. Now, this was an 8.5 copy that sold, which is a really high grade for this book. And it sold for $3,592, which is kind of a little bit down. The prior record was just last month in March of 2025 for $4,200. So it's a down about $600 from the prior record. So a bit of a weaker sale, but again, as I said, I think MyComicShop's auctions, you can get some good deals. So I'm not saying it's a weak, I would recommend I think the advantage, I gotta kind of speak to this with MyComicShop. I think that they get a smaller buyer's premium than some other auction houses like Heritage or those kind of places. So Heritage, we know that it's around 20%. So if you think about it, 20% off of 4,000 is about $800. So if you can get like maybe I think it's like a 3% buyer's premium. It's really low, their buyer's premium. Then that's after, like that's on top. Like these prices don't include the buyer's premium. So there's actually a 3% on top of this. So really, this is what the seller gets for the book. So I think that's how it works on MyComicShop, that this is the seller's actual realized price. So at the end of it, if you think about it, they actually sold it for more, even though it sold for a lower price, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of defend MyComicShop a lot because I actually do like them as a retailer. There's 138 of these on the census, and 122 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 5 on the list is Weird Mysteries number 4. This is from Gilmore, 1953. It's a Bernard Bailey cover, and it is a classic cover. This is one that's high on my want list, actually. I could have had a copy, and then I turned it down. I was like such a moron. I don't know what I was thinking. But this is a classic cover. You got the skull with the dagger through it, and then you got this creepy ant that's coming out with the guy's face on it. It's just like a classic, bizarre pre-code horror cover. And this was a 1.8 raw copy, so it's not graded. And it sold for $4,345, which is a really high sale for this book. The previous record was back in, for a graded 1.8, was back in August of 2020 for $1,801. So this is more than double what the graded 1.8 sold for. However, there was a more recent sale that we can kind of compare it to, where there was a 1.0 that sold for $2,243 in October of 2024. So this one's still more than double, like about double, actually basically double what the 1.0 had sold for. Usually between a 1.8 and a 1.0, really not that much price difference, like a few $100 maybe, but not double. That's actually a big jump in price. And for a raw copy, because usually you're going to pay, you're paying 4% for grading costs. So 4% is like, a couple $100 just to get this book graded. You got to kind of work in all those factors. And then that's if it's a 1.8. What if it's not? Sometimes raws, especially with MyComicShop, they actually undergrade, so maybe they might think that they can get that grade boost. So I think somebody kind of took a chance on this one. I think they thought maybe there was some potential for this book to get a higher grade and could be worth a lot more. So this one was a bit of a gamble, I think, for somebody. And it's a very expensive gamble because, as I said, this is more like a 2.5 or 3.0 price. So I'm a little bit shocked by this one. So this was a big sale. There were 65 of these on the census, and 59 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 3 on the list is USA Comics number 9. This is from Timely, 1943. It's a Sid Shores cover, and it's got a Hitler panels inside. It's but the cover is what makes it a classic cover. You got bondage, you got this weird, creepy Nazi guy with a hypodermic needle. It's just like all the classic stuff. And this one was a 3.5 that sold, and it sold for $5,318. Now, again, no prior record sales for this book, so it's hard to compare. So it is a record, regardless. But let's compare it to a couple other sales. There was a whole bunch of 0.5s that have sold, and 0.5 sold in January of 2024 for $3,360. And I just want to show you how much this book can vary in price. The same book sold in June of 2023, so a year, like half a year earlier, for $720. And then again in 2024, in April of 2024, it sold for $1,500. So, so it went from 700 to 3,000, back down to 1,500 in a 0.5. And in a 1.5, the last sale was in June of 2022 for $3,240. So, this book is all over the place in terms of price. So even the 0.5 sold for more than the 1.5. It's just like all over the place in terms of price. So I was trying to figure out what to estimate a 3.5 to sell for. And based on what I'm seeing, I would have expected around maybe $5,500 to $6,000. So this was a little shy of what you might expect it to sell for. But as I said, it's all over the place. So really, this is probably in line with one of those, more the lower end of what it could have gone for. But still a strong sale. So 5,000, you can't complain, right? Okay, so there's 44 of these on the census, and 38 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 2 on the list is Black Cat Mystery number 50, which is normally the big book at the top of the sales for these prime auctions. This is a Harvey book, a 1954. It's a Lee Elias cover, and it's a classic radium cover. It's probably one of the, I would say, top 3 pre-code horror covers. Probably the most well-recognized pre-code horror cover, with the guy's face just literally disintegrating on the cover. Just a classic book. I actually was bidding on this one. I bid up to 1,000. I knew I wasn't going to win because it blew past that pretty quickly. This was a 1.0 that sold, and it sold for $5,865. Now, the previous record for this book actually was much higher. It had sold for a buy it now for $6,900 back in December of 2023. So that was a bit of an outlier sale, though. Just so you know, that was I think somebody overpaid back then. But normally this book goes for $2,000 to $3,000 in this grade. So typically, there was a sale in 2021 where this book sold for $2,600. Now I would have thought, based on that non-outlier sale, the outlier sale really kind of makes it look like it should be a really expensive book, but typically, as I said, it was going for $2,000 to $3,000. I would have expected this book to sell more like $4,000 to $5,000. So I thought this was a really strong sale when it went for $5,800. That to me is a strong sale. There are 122 of these on the census, and 112 of them are universal blue labels. So this book is graded a lot. So be patient. There's probably a copy out there for you if you're looking for one. Okay. Number 1 on the list, and this one really shocked me. I was surprised by this one, is Teenage Romances number 42. This is from St. John, 1955, and it is a Matt Baker cover. The interesting thing about this book is it's right at the end of the code, pre-code books. The next issue is a coded book. So from 1955, March of 1955, any book from March of 55 has the code on it. So this is the very end of that, like pre-code romance in this case, book. Just a really cool book to get for that reason. This was a 7.0 that sold, which is the highest book on the census. There's actually 2 copies in a 7.0, but that's the highest for this one. And it sold for $11,100. So somebody really wanted this book because that's a really high sale for this book. I was actually shocked. 11,000. That's crazy. Crazy high price. Yeah, and there's no sales. So there's nothing to compare this to in terms of this grade. But there are other copies that sold, and we can kind of compare per point kind of pricing. Now a 2.0 sold for $449 in November of 2023. And a 4.0 sold for $744 in October of 2019. So you'd expect the price per point to be around $200. Like if you do the math, like it kind of works out to that. And there was even a 5.0 that sold for $1,912 in 2018. So anywhere you'd like on the high end, maybe $400 a point. So a 7.0 you would expect maybe 3,000. Kind of doing the math, but this blew that away 3 times, almost 4 times that price. I would have expected maybe around 5,000 for it, you know, at the high end, really high end, but 11,000, that's a massive sale. So MyComicShop really pulled off a big sale on this one. And that's what can happen. In a way, as long as you have 2 people going after the book, you can get these crazy records. So yeah, so there's 19 of these on the census, and 19 of them are universal blue labels. So a pretty rare book, actually, and massive sale. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Did you buy anything from the Prime auction sale on MyComicShop? Tell me in the comments below. And again, thanks everyone for watching. Bye for now.